Kids. This can be a tough season for parents. From sniffling and sneezing to a funny pain in their tummy, kids seem to get all kinds of illnesses. But when should you rush your child to the ER, and when should you take a minute, calm down, and not overreact? Here to help us with this age-old question is Dr. James Ebert from Wright State University, Department of Pediatrics, and Dayton Children's Medical Center. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Ebert.
Thank you for inviting me on. Yes, indeed, this is the time of year when you start to see lots of people getting sick and lots of kids getting sick.
Right, right. And I mean, like we were mentioning, when do you know? When is it just a common cold, something that they can just kind of take a couple of days, maybe away from school, and they'll be okay? And when should you really worry and take your child to the doctors?
Sure, and sometimes that's hard to tell, but certainly if a child has a fever that lasts more than a day or so, or doesn't seem to respond to acetaminophen or other types of medications, that's one thing that you might want to consider in terms of making a decision.
And we actually have up here 8 reasons, right?
Absolutely. And ear pain, nobody's ear should hurt, and so that's a good time to call the physician. Or certainly vomiting and diarrhea that happens more than once, or pain in the abdomen that seems to linger more than a day or so, that's a good time to make a call.
Okay.
And we all know that headaches are common things that kids get, and if a headache comes along and just doesn't seem to go away, then that's a good time to pick up the phone and make that call.
And when you say doesn't go away, about how long should parents be waiting before thinking that they should pick up the phone?
Well, I think certainly if a headache is getting worse and worse, or if it doesn't seem to respond to the usual acetaminophen or ibuprofen type of interventions, or if it's getting progressively worse or seems to be centered in one area of the head, all of those things are reasons why you might want to think about calling your doctor.
Okay. And going along with that, the emergency room, that's another touchy subject when it comes to when you should or shouldn't even bother with bringing your child there. When should parents maybe start to think about taking their child to the ER?
Well, if you get to the point, for example, where there's actually difficulty breathing, that child is working really hard to breathe, it's uncomfortable, that's a reason to go to the emergency room. Or if you get beyond just a simple fever and maybe you've got a stiff neck, or the child seems to be disoriented or lethargic, that might be a reason to go to the emergency room rather than waiting it out.
Okay.
And beyond that, if you notice that even when the fever starts to come down, that the heart rate stays high, that's something that should make you worry a little bit, and that would probably be a reason to consider going to the emergency room.
Okay. And as far as infections go, obviously this time of year, we're all susceptible to them, not just children.
Absolutely.
But what are some of the preventative measures that we can take to kind of push those away?
Well, one of the most important things is, even in the home, washing your hands frequently is important, both for the parents and for the kids. And certainly not just when using the restroom. If somebody's blowing their nose, they should wash their hands afterwards. When tending to small kids who tend to have all kinds of messes and so forth, it's a good idea to wash hands frequently, to encourage children to cover their coughs, to cough into the elbow.
Yeah, that's what I
That's right, that's sort of a thing. Sometimes it's called the Dracula cough. That's the way we want you to cough, because we don't want you to cough on your hands and put those germs on your hands. And then the last thing along the lines of prevention is the current recommendations are that all children over the age of 6 months should get a flu vaccine. And you can turn off a lot of the serious diseases through that kind of prevention.
Okay, so the flu shots are important. Those
Yes,
are something that people have sometimes say, oh, well, do it if you want to, don't worry about it. We should be getting flu shots for our kids.
You could cut down on a lot of the most serious seasonal illness by getting flu shots.
Okay.
Yes.
And are there some websites where people can go for more information?
There's a couple websites I gave you that should be able to come up on the screen there. They're both very reliable. One of them is sponsored by the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the other one is sponsored by the American Academy of Family Practitioners. And there's a lot of good information on these websites.
Right. And that the first one being healthychildren.org and the
That's
second
right.
familydoctor.org.
That's right.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ebert, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, no problem. Now.